And today you have made it to the final process of sifting. Sieves will separate the flour particles and remove all the clumps which are not permitted in the flour. It must be sifted 13 times by the temple priest, and some sources say that the sifting continued until no flour adhered to the priest's hand when he put it into the basket or the bowl with flour, and it came out clean. Each sieve, of course, became smaller and smaller holes. The sixth agency, therefore, is sifting using a sieve or a basket. Once more, it is necessary to separate you. The Lord wants you as an individual, not part of a group or a clump. So this step separates you from other people who have gone through the same steps. It's not like crushing, like the milling or the heat of the fire. It's just shaking. As you fall through the openings in the sieve or the basket, you will fall as an individual, as light as a feather and free. But just what is a sieve in your life? More trials. Yes, trials and trials. All traces of rebellion must be removed from the finest offering for the Lord. Therefore, it may be necessary for you to overcome perhaps 13 trials, since 13 in the Hebrew often means depravity and rebellion. Who is the temple treasurer in your life that puts his hand in to see if it was all clear? The Lord, of course. For he is the only one who knows when you are finally the one he created you to be. Do you find it hard to imagine that after all these steps there could still be anything of the world or flesh to be removed from you? That you would cling to others instead of the Lord? Or that you could go through more trials? One day on your deathbed, when you are alone with the Lord, you will know. But only he knows now if there's an idol more important than him in your heart. So we have reached our goal, which is found in this definition. The first use of sift is Hebrews 5:130 in Strong's. It means to quiver, to lift up, to move, offer, and perfume. That struck me as unusual, as I think it would you, until I recalled the offerings to the Lord were a sweet fragrance, and the incense was such a unique blend of aromas, no one was allowed to have it. Therefore, I believe the bride will be a perfume to the Lord's nostrils like no other. It'll be an offering, a sweet aroma, a perfume fragrance to him, just like the offerings in Leviticus after all these steps. Now, I'm going to tie all this up because there's a strong connection between milling and sifting. In Webster's, we talked about last week, milling is an experience that tortures but refines or disillusions one. And through the mill means to take one through sufficient disciplines or training necessary to bring one to a certain degree of knowledge, skill, or mental state. It is to finish or transform using that millstone, which is figuratively a heavy burden. It is a refining stage where the Lord dresses the bride in the white garments of white linen. So, how do milling and sifting apply to you? It's your mental state that the Lord wants to refine. The miller and sifter, the Lord, has to determine if you will stay with him no matter what. 1 Peter 1:7 in the Amplified reads, so that the genuineness of your faith may be tested. Genuineness of your faith? Yes. The Lord loves all people, but he is only searching for the finest of the fine to be his bride, just like the men in here. So the Lord places a heavy burden, a millstone on you to find out if you will be disillusioned and turn away from him, to be content to be a believer but not the bride, of coarse flour, which never goes on his altar, or to be less like him and more of yourself. He puts you through the mill to test your mental state. Will it change? Will your faith be genuine? When it comes down to the end, will you choose the Lord over everything and every person? Or will that heavy burden cause you to turn away even when the end is so close? It's your faith, and is it a word or is your faith an action? A word or an action? Will the relationship you have with the Lord today be enough to see you through the rough times today or tomorrow? Will you stop after being harvested, threshed, winnowed, parched, or milled? Will you stay through to the final sift and release the inner you that the Lord created you so that his favorite perfume, you, will fill his nostrils, much as the Lord filled Adam's nostrils when he breathed life into him? You see, we have reached our goal, the one in the center of the picture. The grain is now prepared and it's ready to be lifted up. So too the brides, male and female, are ready. Over these weeks, we have connected Yeshua with each step in this picture. We have studied the various actions that went into preparing the wave offering of the finest flour at first fruits. You saw yourself in the physical acts which also illustrate the preparation of his bride: harvesting, threshing, winnowing, parching, grinding, which is not in this picture, sifting, and finally offering up. So let's finish by one more question about the Messiah's bride. How is the bride sanctified or whiter than snow? The bride receives the indwelling of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of the Holy One, at salvation. But it is from a second experience when he reaches Shavuot that the Ruach HaKodesh is manifested in him, that he has the desire and the power to walk in obedience. This happened on Shavuot, but it can happen on any other day and be your personal Shavuot. I remember my personal Shavuot clearly in the fall of 1985. Yet there's more. It's not enough to reach the 49th day next Saturday. The bride's heart must have the Torah written on it. His mind must obey the counsel of the Ruach. Every time you remove leaven back during Pesach, it's a physical act to remind you that the Lord wants to put all sin out of your heart and life so that you can be in his image. And it is a spiritual act reminding you to put and keep the Torah in your heart and to receive and use the Ruach power in order to obey every day. Your goal is to be sanctified without spot or wrinkle in your white linen bridal garments, not just justified. Both. When the testimony of the Torah is in your heart, as it is in the heart of the Holy of Holies in the ark, there will be no room for sin in your heart. Exodus 40:20, he put that testimony into the ark. Deuteronomy 36 says the Lord will circumcise thine heart. Mark 12:30, he says that the Lord loves with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Love him. Romans 8:6, you are to be spiritually minded. That is life and peace. Thus, the bride's heart has the salvation testimony of his blood justifying him, and is sanctified by the Lord's commands, teachings, and instructions with the power to obey. Remember, all of these feasts that we've been going through are not isolated. They are holy days that are a unit. It's only visible when you connect Pesach and Shavuot with the Omer bridge. Keeping the Omer is where you see it. It is the bridge, and that is why we number up to 50. Please stand. Next week we will finish. We will now say our blessing, and this is our 6th week. All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sifarat ha'omer. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, whose commandments add holiness to our lives and who gives us the command of counting the Omer. Today is 42 days, which is 6 weeks and 0 days of the counting of the Omer. Shalom.